experienced this, and some of you are about to experience it. The freedom that comes with having your driver's license is
you are a loser until you turn 17.
in American culture.
Unless you just break the rules.
In American culture, this is one of the things that is seen as kind of a gateway to freedom, right? And for some of you, you see the downside of it where it's like, I got my license and now my parent wants me to drive my siblings around or pick up groceries or do these things. But even if that's the case, you still are the one with the power to do those things. And that's an exciting, amazing thing. We love the idea of freedom, and especially boys, but not limited to just boys. There's something about the sense of the open road that for most people is just one of those romantic, adventurous things. That was never something that appealed to me, but that's because I'm weird.
I think I love it.
Here's the thing, though.
What?
That's an example. But when we look at our lives, we all want to be free, don't we? And by free, what I mean here is when you get down to it, there's a truth that you and I want to answer only to ourselves. We don't want other people telling us what to do or have boundaries set up by others, tell us we can't feel something or be something. We don't want to have to listen to anyone else anymore. And one of the beauties of the driver's license for American teenagers is you're saying to yourself, I now have the ability to be as free as I want to be, in theory. Maybe I don't have a car.
But
Maybe my
after
parents
10,
wouldn't let me.
You're breaking the law.
And you can only take one phone.
Wait,
It's not a perfect illustration.
You're supposed to have one non-family, but
like seriously?
Here's the
just
thing.
adopted
Oh,
Nathan,
crap.
no.
I fit 5 people in my car.
Our desire for freedom.
Not me.
I fit 5 people in my car.
Hey guys, let's try to focus.
Gosh.
Our desire for freedom is often something that can lead us into slavery. We can be so caught up with wanting things to look a certain way that freedom becomes the thing that binds us. We're starting a new series this week. We're going to be looking at parts of the book of Ephesians. The series is called The Anatomy of a Christian. And what we're going to be doing over the month of November, over the 4 weeks that we're together in November, is we're going to be breaking down through the book of Ephesians, what is a Christian? What are the elements that make a follower of Jesus Christ? We're going to continue to look at this and fix our minds on this, because if you're someone who is here tonight and you're still figuring out this Jesus thing, maybe you're on the fence, maybe you're straight up hostile and you're here because your parent dragged you here, I don't know the story. If that's you, this is a chance to learn and to see some different angles and aspects about what it is that a follower of Christ is supposed to be. Who are we meant to be? And if you are a follower of Christ, what we all need is to be confronted again and again and again with the truth of the gospel, because you and I want it our own way too often. And contrary to what we see championed around us, what we're going to look at tonight is, in a world that says go and be free, what we see is that a Christian is dependent. A Christian is dependent. And we're going to look at this idea of dependence through this book of Ephesians, through Ephesians chapter 2, one section of it. We'll see that a Christian is dependent, and we're going to look at what we desire, what we receive, and what in the end we can claim. Your standing before God is not based on how well you are. It's not based on what you can achieve. A Christian is dependent upon God. You do not need to be dependent on yourself. We're looking at the book of Ephesians. In chapter 2, the first 3 verses, they go like this. It says, as for you, you were dead in your transgressions and sins, in which you used to live when you followed the ways of this world and the ruler of the kingdom of the air, the spirit who is now at work in those who are disobedient. All of us lived among them at one time, gratifying the cravings of our flesh and following its desires and thoughts. Like the rest of us, we were by nature deserving of wrath. So Paul opens up this chapter with a very strong statement, right? He says, you were dead. He's talking to the believers, the church in the city of Ephesus, people who have become followers of Christ, and he kind of reminds them what the score was. He says, listen, you have come to this faith in a God who has kind of called you to be his followers. But remember, you were dead. You were dead, I was dead, We were dead before Christ. You were dead in your sins and transgressions. And then later on it tells you, all of us lived like this. All of us, if you were a follower of Christ, there was a time, even if you grew up in largely a Christian family, you grew up around church, for all of us, there was a time before we truly understood the gospel and became a follower of Jesus. If you do not believe that is true for you, guess what it is? You were not always a Christian. That's not how Christianity works. We all once were dead, and all of us lived amongst them at one time. You and I were all under the same kind of death. He says we were gratifying the cravings of our flesh and our desires. What you and I are going to default desire, the thing that you and I are naturally going to be drawn to wanting, are these desires and thoughts of our flesh, the things that we want, the things that are against God. In fact, if we look at verse 2, where it talks about kind of the ruler of the kingdom of the air, and that it's this spirit that's in work, what Paul is saying is, listen, there's something at work in you. Every single one of you. Either there's the Spirit of the Lord working in you, or there's the spirit of the world. It's one or the other. And you need to remember that we were all once in this place. Paul's enforcing to the Ephesians that they need to reevaluate their own goodness. You were not born special. You did not magically become good. You do not have a reason to look down on those who are far from God, who don't match up with what you think a Christian should look like, because you, in fact, were once in the exact same place. See, the truth of the matter is that what you and I desire when the chips are down is often very selfish, and we can't will ourselves into long-term change. We can will ourselves into short-term change, but the truth is, our desire is always going to kind of tilt negative unless we have something else that's pushing us, and it has to come from outside of us. When I was in college, I was dating this girl who was very particular about certain things that I would do. She didn't like a lot of the things that I did, and when I was getting ready to go and visit her parents at one point, she basically coached me for a couple months about all the things about myself I needed to change. How I sat at the table, how quickly I ate, how I used napkins. I needed to learn to use chopsticks because it would be highly offensive if I couldn't use chopsticks in their home. It was a real to-do. And you know what? While we were together, I tried really hard to do all those things. I was better at everything that she'd asked me to be better at because I desired that in that moment. Then we broke up.
That's a little crap.
And you know what happened slowly? Is all those changes that I had made to myself that I had once really desired, they went by the wayside. They didn't actually stick because that wasn't what I desired. Right? Yeah, okay, something was able to make me want that for a period of time, but it's not where I ran back to. The first step in understanding what I mean by saying a Christian is dependent is to look at the reality that our desires don't always lead us to a good place. When left to our own devices, our desires are honestly kind of selfish. And that sounds kind of doom and gloom, but until you and I are able to look ourselves squarely in the face and say, this is who we are when the chips are down, you will never, ever be able to understand the beauty of the gospel unless you understand the depth of your own sin. This is a truth. Whether you've been a Christian 5 seconds or you're still working through it and you're not a Christian yet, whether you've been a Christian your entire life, so to speak, right? We obviously said no one has been a Christian from birth, but like whether you've been a Christian a long time, we need to keep coming back to this point. We can end up being kind of selfish often, right? Like I want to be a better person so that everyone will see that I'm a better person. I want to do the right thing so my parents will see that I'm the best kid in my family. If I don't get the lead in that play, I'm not going to amount to anything. What will my life be about if I don't get to start this season? What if I have this injury? That's what I am. Oh man, this person would really mess up this youth group if they came. I cannot believe they're still coming here. What a waste. They are so unholy, which is a very ironic and nasty thought. Because the truth is, that's what we all are. No one, I say this a lot and I will say it again, there is no one who is not welcome here. That's the truth. Because there is no one in the whole world, no matter what they've done, no matter how they've maybe even hurt or offended you in the past, or offend your sensibilities, there is no one who is too far to be brought back to the grace of Jesus Christ. No one. Whether or not you are a follower of Christ tonight, I imagine you can agree with me that these types of sentiments aren't the ones you would aspire to. You don't want to be the kind of person who does good things for shallow or selfish motivations. That's not who we desire to be. No one dreams of having a selfish attitude, but what the Bible tells us to be true is when we're left to our own devices, even the good things we desire to can be twisted. And look, there are seeds of positivity in all the things we mentioned. To desire to be in a group that's good, to desire to get the lead, to play on the field, to impress your parents, to work hard in school, to have good friends. Those aren't bad things, but all good things can be twisted. A Christian is dependent. And a Christian is dependent because they realize their desires are twisted. But if what we desire is twisted and less than amazing, then that's setting us up for what is probably the most beautiful part of the passage that we're going to read tonight in verses 4 through 7, because what we receive way better than anything that we see that condemns us before the Lord. Here we go, verse 4 through 7. It says, "But because of his great love for us, God, who is rich in mercy, made us alive with Christ, even when we were dead in transgressions. It is by grace you have been saved. And God raised us up with Christ and seated us with him in the heavenly realms in Jesus Christ, in order that in the coming ages he might show the incomparable riches of his grace expressed in the kindness to us in Jesus Christ." If our starting argument is dead, it is an amazing, amazing thing that we are offered this thing that takes us from death to life. Maybe some of you have experienced death or tragedy in your families. Can you imagine the contrast of death coming back to life? The tragedy, the hurt, the messed up stuff that comes with death, for all that to come undone. This is what Jesus Christ offers for you and for me. And how is this accomplished? It's not about you. That's what we're going to see later on. Is that one thing that God makes clear is you are not the hero of this story, nor can you be. It says it's God who does this. He is the one who, because of his mercy and love and kindness, we see these words, he has made us alive. We receive this because of his great love, we see in verse 4, a gift of rich mercy. In verse 4 again, it is by grace, his mercy again, his grace that you have been saved, to show his grace expressed in kindness. This is the picture. What we have received is life based on a love and a kindness and a mercy, which to receive mercy, you have to recognize that you're not deserving of something. Otherwise, it wouldn't be mercy. You can't have mercy unless you're receiving something contrary to what you deserve. This is a beautiful picture Paul is painting, but the type of God that we have according to Scripture. This is a God who allows you to share in immeasurable glory on the basis of somebody else's actions, and is said to be abounding in love and mercy and kindness. And if you are somebody who calls themselves a Christian, my question for you is, when is the last time that you allowed yourself to sit and simmer in the reality of this God who died for you? Let me tell you, when I was preparing for this message, it was an amazing and beautiful thing. I was sitting in my home on Tuesday. I was sick with a low-grade fever, and I felt miserable all day, but I'm reading this passage, and I'm struck with this amazing truth. I don't deserve this love. Yeah, there are days that I think I do, but when the chips are down, I'm not so deserving. And in fact, it tells me that it's I'm not. Yet because of his love, he reaches out to those who are not deserving. If you aren't a follower of Christ, the question for you is the same. Isn't this the type of God that you'd like to have if you could? This is the God we see constantly presented to us in Scripture. And I think for many of us as Christians, and I would include myself in this, it's sometimes easy to think of being saved as a moment that happens somewhere in time. And then once you're saved, the goal then is to figure out, how do I become a better Christian? What if being a better Christian was way less about getting into a certain school or emulating perfect behaviors? But what if it was about constantly being just blown away by the magnificence, which is a kind of old-fashioned word, but it fits here, right? Because it's that amazing what you and I have received in Jesus Christ. Because it's so easy for reading the Bible to turn into a tedious slog through what feels like a rule book. And it loses any kind of glory. We don't want to do it after a while. We tried it, but then we hit Leviticus, and it's not fun.
Oh, shit.
Or it's easy for prayer to turn into kind of a wish list or a mantra that's devoid of any passion at all. Or for the church to be a social club at best and a checklist at worst. Christians aren't supposed to be a cult of perfect, holier-than-thou types that can sing along with every song on Caleb and are all stars at making you feel like you are not supposed to be here. Christians are dead men and women who have come back to life and can't get enough of the fact that somebody loved them enough to bring them back. What would it take for you to capture that joy? What would it take for us to be that kind of group? We see what we desire when the chips are down. We see what we have received through the cross. So the question that's left is, if a Christian is dependent, then what is it else? This is how this passage ends, verses 8 through 10. Say, for it is by grace that you have been saved through faith. And this is not from yourself. It's a gift from God, not by works, so that no one can boast. For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. When you look at these verses, something should become very clear very quickly. You didn't do it. We don't get the credit. And we live in a world where that kind of sucks, right? Because we're all trying to get credit. We're trying to get the grade, make the team, be the person who did this, have the most likes. You don't get the credit here. And that's okay. You don't have to. It's by grace you have been saved. And it's not for yourself, it's a gift. How come it's so hard for us to receive gifts sometimes? Ask my wife. It's extremely hard to pay me a compliment. I don't know why it is. But for all of us, this is actually probably a true thing. Some of us maybe more than others. But we instinctively don't like to receive something we don't think we've earned. What this tells us is you haven't earned it. And you know what? It's okay to accept it. You can't do it by works. And why can't you do it by works? What Paul says is amazing. He says, listen, God did it this way so that you don't get to boast about it. It's almost like he knows how selfish you and I can tend to be and how arrogant we can be in our own minds. And God made his plan to save the world in such a way that you don't get to do that. That's not the way it works. It says no one can boast because you didn't do it. I didn't do it. Where God's face is his handiwork. And I love that too. This verse is used often, and it can be used in a dangerous way where you're told, hey, you're God's handiwork, meant to do good work, so go get them. Go do it. Finish the verse, which God prepared in advance for us to do. Even these good things that we do, God's given us. You're not the hero. That's okay. It's actually more than okay. It's freeing. It's amazing. We were made and prepared, and we were made to do good works. And we should. Because it's how he's prepared us. When we lean into him, we can do great things. This doesn't seem to say much about when we try to lean overly into ourselves, though. We're a little over time. I apologize, so we'll try to kind of tie it together here. A little question. What are you trying to claim as your own? And what would it look like to give it away? Maybe your athletic ability? What would it look like for you to surrender your identity as an athlete to realize you are more than what you are in the field or the court. And that's not me telling you to stop doing the sport that you're playing. But you all know the difference between playing and enjoying it and when it's gone too far. Because for some of us in this room, it's a real temptation. You are more than what you are on the court or the field. Maybe for you, it's a quest for fame and notoriety. And fame and notoriety, in many cases, is the death of passion. How much more freely could you pursue your passion if you could live in contentment of how loved you are by Christ? Insert friendships, your desire to have a boyfriend or girlfriend, the total respect of your parents, getting into the perfect college. You can put any of these things into the place. What would it look like for you to not try to build your identity on those things and be dependent on Christ instead? There are going to be an infinite number of people that are going to try to tell you to earn an infinite number of things in this world. Your value can't be built on them. It's not a solid ground. Your desire to chase these things will become insatiable. They'll always seem elusive, and when you finally have it, they're never going to be quite as satisfying as you thought they were. It's like in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And the boy Edmund is given some Turkish delight, and he takes it and he thinks it's the most amazing thing. And so he spends most of the middle part of the book trying to get to the point where he gets more Turkish delight. And it can never satisfy. You know, you and I put myself in this category. We often think we need to figure out how to seem as big and put together as possible, don't we? But when you realize how dependent you are on Christ, you can see that you don't gain anything by pretending to have it all together. In fact, if anything, you miss out on the radical acceptance you find on the cross in spite of the ways you fall short of the measure. Until you come to the end of yourself, you are never going to see the beauty of the cross. It'll just be one more thing. For some of you tonight, maybe it's your night. Just to stop chasing what makes you feel strong and accept that you are in fact weak. Not an easy thing to do, but a necessary one for all of us. And when you see your weakness, you can find that there is someone who is strong for you and can be your strength. This life is not about our standing on our own 2 feet, but leaning on the strong arms of Jesus. And for others of you, tonight should be a reminder to stop pretending that you saved yourself, or that you can drop the mask, drop the pose, and find yourself in awe again of Jesus. That's the call. Stop pretending and just admire the Lord and what he did for you. And don't keep it to yourself. That hurting person around us, they need to see this hope too. Dependent is not a bad thing. We don't get to claim our standing before God. We don't get to say we earned it. We can say, I got this thing that is more precious than gold. It's the only thing that's going to go beyond this life. And I didn't deserve it, but he gave it to me. And man, isn't that the best news? Let me pray for us, and then we can dismiss.